In our previous video, we viewed what inequalities were, how to graph them, how to write them for different situations. So right now I want you to imagine you're in college and you're making your own money. You don't live with your parents, you're on your own, and you want to plan a road trip with some of your roommates. And on your road trip, you're going to travel from Azusa, California, which is our point A on the graph, and you're going to travel to point B, which is Las Vegas. Now, the total distance from city to city is 245 miles. So what is the round trip distance? And the round trip distance is the distance there and back home. So pause the video, take a minute, and calculate the round trip distance. Okay, I'll imagine that you did pause the video. So in order to find the round trip distance, you probably added 245 plus 245, because 245 be the distance there and 245 for the distance back. And total, that would have gave you 490 miles. Okay, keep this information to the side. We're going to come back to this in a few slides. Our objective for this lesson is how do we solve inequalities by addition and subtraction. This is going to be Chapter 3, Section 2 out of your Holt textbooks. So if you ever need to reference a second source, this would be the source that you could turn to. Okay, let's return back to the example where you're on your road trip. Remember, you're going with your friends from Azusa to Las Vegas. And remember, the round trip that we calculated was 490 miles. So we calculated that on the first slide. So before you guys go on your trip, you and your friends get together and you figure out how much money you have to spend during the entire trip. Using math, you figure out you have enough money to drive a total of 850 miles. And I'm going to ask you to write an inequality to show the number of miles M you can drive while in Las Vegas. So M is going to be the total miles that you can drive in Vegas. So drive in Vegas. Remember that we're going to have to take away 490 miles from the 850 because you're going to need money to drive there and back home. You don't want to have to wash dishes in Las Vegas or panhandle for money so that you can get home. So you only have enough money for 850 miles. So here we have M is going to be the number of miles that you can drive in Las Vegas. That's driving around Las Vegas. Plus 490 miles. Those are the miles needed to get home and back, or excuse me, to get to Las Vegas and back. And then we're going to have some inequality. I'll put a box, a red box. We're going to fill that red box with an inequality. And the total is going to be 850 miles. So what inequality do you think belongs in the box? Take a minute. Last lesson, we talked about what happens, what type of words and verbiage they can use, and a word problem can dictate what kind of inequality you use. So which inequality do you think we're going to have to use for this one? Well, if you have M plus 90, that is going to have to be less than the 850. Less than, or it can equal to that 850, right? This amount over here, the M plus 490, cannot be more than 850 because 850 is the only money that you have for the miles that you can drive or go on your trip. Here's a reminder. Solving one-step inequalities is much like solving one-step equations. To solve an inequality, you need to isolate the variable using the properties of inequality and inverse operations. So just the same type of procedures we use for Chapter 2, we're going to have to do for Chapter 3, but instead of the equal sign, now we're going to have an inequality symbol. And we can graph our answers on a number line. Here are some examples for us, and our first example is going to be example A. We're going to solve the inequality and graph the solutions on the number line below. So in order to solve this inequality, we need to use inverse operations. Remember, we're trying to isolate the variable x, so I'll put a box around that. So a minus 12 to both sides. You can also still draw a line down the inequality sign if that helps to keep your sides different. Here, the 12s cancel out to be 0, and we just get x, which is going to be less than, notice how I kept the same inequality symbol, less than 8. So x represents any value that is less than 8. So on our number line, we are going to do a open or closed circle. If you said open circle, you were 100% right because there's no bar underneath the inequality symbol. And all the values less than 8 are going to go to the left side. So we can draw either arrow there, or we can shade in the number line and then draw an arrow. Okay, both answers are correct. Here's example B, our second example. We're going to solve the inequality and we're going to graph the solutions on the number line below. So here, once again, we could draw a line down our inequality so we know which side is which. The inverse of the subtraction of 5 is going to be the addition of 5. So we're going to add 5 to both sides. These 5's cancel out to be 0, and we get D is greater than, well, let's see, negative 7 plus 5. The signs are different, so I need to subtract the values and keep the sign of the bigger number, which is negative. So my answer is going to be negative 2. And D has to be greater than negative 2. So we're going to go to negative 2 on our graph. We're going to use an open circle since there's no bar underneath the inequality symbol. And any value for greater than negative 2 is going to go to the right. So we can draw an arrow up, or you can shade the actual number line. So back to that road trip example, we came up with an inequality that represented how many miles we had left to drive, but we never solved it. So let's go and solve it now. So remember, the inequality was n plus 490. N represents the miles that you can drive in Las Vegas, and that has to be less than 850 miles. And that's the mile that you and your friends calculated you have enough money for. So we're going to subtract 490 from both sides. And that's going to let us know how many more miles we have that we can drive and still afford. So the 490s cancel out. We get M less than or equal to 0 minus 0 is 0. I'm going to have to take away from that 8. So I get a 5 there, and that's going to be 6. And 7 minus 4 would give us 3. So we have 360 miles. It could be less than 360 or up to, at most, 360 miles that we can drive in Vegas. Come to class with some questions prepared for discussion on this example. Give me some great feedback. Let me know if this was difficult or if this was an easy lesson for you to understand.